Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine standing on a railway platform high in the Swiss Alps. The air is impossibly crisp and clean, so cold it makes your lungs feel alive with each breath. Around you, the world is blanketed in the purest white snow you've ever seen, and the morning sun catches on a million tiny ice crystals, making everything sparkle like diamond dust. In the distance, mountain peaks rise so high they seem to touch the ceiling of the sky itself, their summits crowned with ancient glaciers that have witnessed centuries pass in silence. Before you stands a train that looks almost too bright against all this whiteness. Its carriages are painted a bold, cheerful red, each one adorned with the distinctive white Swiss cross. But these aren't ordinary train cars. Their windows sweep upward in gentle curves, creating panoramic glass walls that promise unobstructed views of the spectacular journey ahead. This is the Glacier Express, and though it's called the slowest express train in the world, covering just 291 kilometers in roughly 8 hours, there's nothing slow about the way it captures your heart. This legendary train has been making this journey since 1930, connecting two of the most famous mountain resorts in all of Europe. From Zermatt, a car-free village nestled in a valley beneath the iconic Matterhorn, to St. Moritz, the birthplace of alpine winter tourism and playground of royalty and celebrities. The Glacier Express travels through a landscape so dramatic, so impossibly beautiful, that many passengers find themselves speechless as they watch it unfold through those enormous windows. The route ahead is nothing short of extraordinary. You'll cross 291 bridges, each one a marvel of engineering that allows this train to span deep gorges and wild rivers. You'll pass through 91 tunnels, some just brief moments of darkness, others stretching for miles through the heart of mountains. You'll climb from Zermatt's elevation of 1,606 meters above sea level all the way up to 2,033 meters at the Oberalp Pass, the highest point of the journey, where winter never really loosens its grip and the landscape becomes utterly pristine. But numbers alone cannot capture what makes this journey magical. It's in the way the light changes as you move from valley to valley, from golden morning sunshine to the blue-white brilliance of high-altitude snowfields. It's in the tiny villages you'll pass, their wooden chalets looking like something from a fairy tale, smoke curling from chimneys as families go about their mountain lives. It's in the forests of fir and spruce, their branches heavy with snow, creating natural tunnels of white and green. It's in the sound of the train itself, the gentle rhythm of wheels on rails that becomes almost meditative, lulling you into a peaceful state where time seems to slow and stretch. This journey will take you through 3 different Swiss cantons, Valais, Uri, and Graubünden. You'll hear different dialects of Swiss German, pass through regions where people still speak Romansh, one of Switzerland's 4 official languages. You'll travel through valleys carved by glaciers over tens of thousands of years, cross passes that have been vital trade routes since Roman times, and witness engineering achievements that changed the face of the Alps forever. The Glacier Express isn't just transportation between 2 points. It's a moving observation platform designed specifically to showcase Switzerland's most spectacular mountain scenery. The panoramic carriages were created with this purpose in mind. Their curved glass walls eliminating blind spots and ensuring that everyone on board, regardless of where they're sitting, gets an incredible view. Some sections of track were built not because they were the most practical route, but because they offered the most stunning vistas. This train was designed for wonder, for the kind of jaw-dropping, breath-catching beauty that makes you fall silent and simply stare. And in winter, everything becomes even more extraordinary. The mountains that are impressive in summer become otherworldly when draped in snow and ice. The valleys transform into scenes from winter dreams, with frozen waterfalls hanging like crystal curtains from cliff faces. The villages seem to huddle closer together against the cold, their warm lights glowing more invitingly through the blue twilight. The very air feels different, sharper, cleaner, filled with the particular silence that only deep snow can create. As you board this remarkable train and find your seat by one of those magnificent windows, take a moment to simply breathe and be present. The journey ahead will carry you through landscapes that have inspired artists, poets, and travelers for generations. You'll see views that people plan their entire vacations around, views that appear on postcards and calendars around the world. But more than that, you'll experience something that's becoming increasingly rare in our rushed modern world: the luxury of slow travel, of taking time to really see and absorb a place, of letting a journey unfold at its own natural pace. The Glacier Express averages about 24 miles per hour, or roughly 39 kilometers per hour. At modern highway speeds, you could cover this distance in a couple of hours. But what would you see? What would you miss? Here, traveling slowly becomes not a limitation, but a gift. Every curve of track reveals something new. Every valley offers its own unique character. Every mountain tells its own story through the shapes of its peaks and the patterns in its snow. So settle deep into your comfortable seat. Feel the gentle warmth of the heated carriage around you, while outside the winter world stretches away in all directions. Listen to the subtle sounds, the whisper of the train's motion, the occasional announcement in multiple languages, the quiet conversations of fellow travelers who are also falling under the spell of these mountains. Watch as the platform begins to slip away and the train starts its journey, slowly at first, then finding its rhythm as it sets out through this winter wonderland. We're about to spend the next several hours traveling through some of the most beautiful terrain on Earth. We'll climb mountains, cross historic passes, span dramatic gorges, and wind through valleys where the old ways of alpine life still hold strong. We'll see how humans and mountains have learned to coexist, how engineering and nature can exist in harmony, how the modern world and ancient traditions can share the same spectacular space. Let the mountains work their magic on you. Let the endless snow-covered vistas calm your mind. Let the rhythm of the rails become a kind of meditation. This is the Glacier Express winter journey, and there's nothing else quite like it in the world. The adventure is about to begin. Departure from Zermatt, the Matterhorn's domain. Our journey begins in Zermatt, and there's truly nowhere else on Earth quite like this village. Nestled at the end of the Matter Valley, At an elevation of 1,606 meters, Zermatt has been car-free since 1947, making it one of the most peaceful mountain resorts in the world. No combustion engines are allowed within the village limits. Instead, everything moves by electric vehicles, horse-drawn carriages, and most of all, on foot. The result is a place where you can actually hear the mountains, where the silence of the high Alps isn't shattered by traffic noise, where the air stays pristine and clean. On a winter morning in Zermatt, the village feels like it's been lifted out of time. The main street, Bahnhofstrasse, is lined with traditional wooden chalets, their dark timber weathered by countless alpine seasons, their balconies carved with intricate designs that speak of old craftsmanship and mountain pride. Many of these buildings date back hundreds of years, their thick walls and small windows built to withstand the fierce winter storms that can sweep through this valley. Now they house hotels, restaurants, and shops that cater to visitors from around the world. But their character remains distinctly alpine, distinctly Swiss. Snow lies thick on every surface in winter. The roofs of the chalets wear heavy white blankets, with icicles hanging from the eaves like crystal decorations. The narrow streets are packed with snow that squeaks underfoot, creating that particular sound that only happens when the temperature drops well below freezing. Electric vehicles glide silently past, their modern technology somehow not looking out of place in this historic setting. Horse-drawn sleighs carry couples wrapped in warm blankets, the bells on the horses' harnesses jingling softly in the cold air. But what truly dominates Zermatt, what draws your eye again and again, no matter where you stand in the village, is the Matterhorn. This mountain is unlike any other. Its distinctive pyramid shape, 4 steep faces meeting at a sharp summit, 4,478 meters above sea level, has become one of the most recognized peaks in the world. It's the mountain that inspired the Toblerone chocolate bar logo, the mountain that has appeared in countless films and photographs, the mountain that mountaineers dream about climbing and painters try to capture. In winter, the Matterhorn becomes even more dramatic. Its distinctive pyramid shape rises to 4,478 meters above sea level, making it one of the highest peaks in the Alps. The mountain's faces are streaked with snow and ice, creating patterns that change with the light and the seasons. Sometimes clouds wrap around its summit, what locals call the tablecloth effect, creating an air of mystery. Other times, it stands sharp and clear against an impossibly blue sky, so vivid it almost doesn't look real. The mountain seems to change with every hour, every shift in the light. At sunrise, it glows pink and gold, the famous alpine glow that has inspired painters and poets. At midday, it's stark white and gray against the blue. At sunset, it turns purple and red before fading into silhouette as the first stars appear. The Matterhorn isn't just beautiful, it's powerful in a way that's hard to articulate. Standing beneath it, you feel small in the best possible way, reminded of your place in a vast and ancient natural world. The mountain has stood here for millions of years, shaped by incomprehensible forces of geology and ice. It was sacred to the people who lived in these valleys long before Zermatt became a tourist destination. Even now, There's something about its presence that commands respect, that makes you speak a little more quietly, that makes you want to simply sit and watch as the light plays across its faces. For those who want to get even closer to the mountain's majesty, Zermatt offers 2 spectacular excursions that take you high into the winter realm. The Gornergrat Railway, which has been operating since 1898, climbs to 3,089 meters, making it one of the highest open-air railways in Europe. The journey takes about 33 minutes, and every moment reveals new perspectives on the Matterhorn and the surrounding peaks. The train runs year-round, and in winter, it becomes a passage through a landscape of pure snow and ice. As the Gornergrat train climbs, you leave the village behind and enter a world of increasing purity. The tree line falls away, and you're surrounded by vast snowfields that stretch away toward distant peaks. At this elevation, the snow never fully melts, even in summer. In winter, it lies meters deep, sculpted by the wind into smooth curves and sharp ridges. The train passes small frozen lakes, their surfaces covered in snow, their depths locked in ice. You might see hardy mountain sheep, called ibex, their thick winter coats allowing them to survive in these harsh conditions, or chamois, smaller and more agile, picking their way across slopes that look impossibly steep. At the summit of Gornergrat, the viewing platform offers one of the most spectacular panoramas in all the Alps. From here, you can see not just the Matterhorn, but 29 peaks that rise above 4,000 meters. The Monte Rosa Massif, Switzerland's highest peak at 4,634 meters, dominates the skyline with its massive glaciated bulk. The Gorner Glacier, one of the largest in the Alps, spreads out below like a frozen river, its surface a maze of crevasses and seracs that speak of the immense forces within the ice. The air at this altitude is thin and incredibly clear. On a good day, you can see for hundreds of kilometers, all the way to the mountains of Italy and France. The sky seems deeper, bluer than at lower elevations. The sun feels more intense despite the cold, and you understand why sunglasses and sunscreen are essential even in winter at these heights. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind and occasionally by the rumble of an avalanche somewhere on a distant peak, a reminder that these mountains are still alive, still changing, still dangerous despite their beauty. The other essential winter excursion is to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise, reached by cable car from Zermatt. This is the highest cable car station in Europe, sitting at 3,883 meters. The journey up is spectacular, with the cable car ascending in several stages, each one revealing new vistas. You pass over the Theodul Glacier, its surface a maze of crevasses that look like abstract art from above. In winter, this glacier merges seamlessly with the surrounding snowfields, creating a landscape of pure white that seems to go on forever. At the summit of Glacier Paradise, you're higher than all but a handful of alpine peaks. The viewing platform here offers 360-degree views that take in Italian, French, and Swiss mountains. On a clear day, you can see 38 4,000-meter peaks, including the Matterhorn from an angle most people never witness. The mountain looms nearby, close enough that you can see every detail of its north face, close enough to understand why it's considered one of the most challenging climbs in mountaineering. But Glacier Paradise offers more than just views. Inside the glacier itself, carved into the ancient ice, is the Glacier Palace. You descend into this frozen world through a tunnel, emerging in a space where everything is made of ice. The walls glow with blue light, the particular shade of blue that only exists in the heart of glaciers, where ice compressed over centuries absorbs all colors except this ethereal azure. Ice sculptures line the passages, some abstract, others depicting local legends and wildlife. There's even a throne made of ice where visitors can sit and feel, just for a moment, like winter royalty. The Glacier Palace is kept at a constant temperature well below freezing, maintained by the glacier's own cold rather than any artificial system. Walking through it, you're literally inside a living glacier, surrounded by ice that fell as snow decades or even centuries ago. You can see layers in the ice walls, annual bands like tree rings that record the history of alpine winters. In some places, you can see rocks embedded in the ice, debris picked up by the glacier on its slow journey down the mountain. It's a reminder that glaciers, though they seem static, are constantly moving, constantly reshaping the landscape. Back in Zermatt village, as morning progresses, the train station begins to fill with travelers preparing for the Glacier Express journey. The station itself is a beautiful building, modern but respectful of alpine traditions, all glass and wood that somehow feels both contemporary and timeless. Inside, there's a sense of anticipation in the air. People are checking their reservations, organizing their luggage, taking last photos of the Matterhorn before the journey begins. The Glacier Express arrives at the platform with quiet efficiency, its bright red carriages standing out brilliantly against the white world around it. Up close, you can appreciate the engineering that went into these panoramic cars. The windows curve upward, eliminating the need for overhead luggage racks and creating an almost seamless view of the sky and mountains. The glass is specially tinted to reduce glare without diminishing the colors outside. Inside, the seats are comfortable and spacious, arranged so that everyone has a window view. Each seat has its own table, and many travelers spread out their belongings, settling in for the long journey ahead. Some bring books they never quite get around to reading, too distracted by the views outside. Others have cameras and phones ready, though they'll quickly discover that no photograph can truly capture what they're seeing. A few seasoned travelers bring binoculars, knowing that the route passes through areas where you might spot wildlife, from the golden eagles that soar above the valleys to the marmots that hibernate beneath the snow. The train crew moves through the carriages, checking tickets and reservations, offering information in multiple languages. They have the easy competence of people who know this route intimately, who have made this journey hundreds or thousands of times, but still appreciate its beauty. They point out features you might miss, suggest which side of the train will have the best views for upcoming sections, share stories about the places you'll pass through. As departure time approaches, there's a sense of peaceful expectation. Outside the windows, Zermatt looks picture perfect, the kind of scene that makes you want to remember every detail. The church spire rises above the village, The Matterhorn towers in the background, and fresh snow from last night's fall makes everything look newly painted. A few people are still arriving at the platform, hurrying with that particular combination of excitement and concern about making it on time, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. Then, with barely a whisper of sound, the train begins to move. There's no dramatic lurch, no loud announcements, just a smooth, gentle start that has you gliding away from the platform before you quite realize the journey has begun. Zermatt starts to slide past the windows, the village that's been your base, your portal to this alpine world, beginning to retreat into the valley behind you. The train follows the valley downward at first, the same valley that the river Vispa has carved over millennia. This is the Matter Valley, and in winter, it's a study in contrasts. The valley floor is relatively flat, covered in deep snow, while the mountains rise steeply on both sides, their faces too steep for snow to cling to in places, showing the gray rock beneath. Small villages appear alongside the track, each one a cluster of dark wooden buildings with snow-heavy roofs, each one looking like it's been there forever and will be there long after we're gone. About 10 minutes into the journey, the train passes a viewpoint where you can see the Glacier stretching across the mountainside above the village of Randa. This glacier extends about 3.5 kilometers, lying to the east of the Weisshorn Massif. Even from the train, even at this distance, you can see the details of the glacier, the crevasses that split its surface, the blue shadows in the ice, the way it flows down the mountain like a frozen river. Glaciers move, though so slowly that you'd need to watch for years to see it, grinding down the mountains grain by grain, carving the valleys that trains like this one now traverse. The winter landscape here feels both harsh and delicate. Harsh because you're acutely aware of how unforgiving this environment can be, how quickly cold and altitude can become dangerous, how avalanches can sweep down mountainsides with devastating force. But delicate too, in the way snow accumulates on the tiniest branch, in the perfect crystals of hoarfrost on every surface, in the way the landscape seems to hold its breath under all this white. Soon, the train enters the Kipfen Gorge, one of the most dramatic sections of this early part of the journey. Here, the valley narrows dramatically, and the train runs alongside the river Vispa in a space that feels almost claustrophobic after the openness of the upper valley. The river, even in winter, flows with turbulent energy, its water gray with glacial silt. In places, ice forms on the slower sections, creating fantastic sculptures where the current has frozen mid-flow. The gorge walls rise steeply on both sides, and you can see the massive concrete walls that protect the railway line. These walls are a reminder that this valley, beautiful as it is, can be dangerous. Floods and avalanches once frequently damaged the railway here until these protections were built. The train emerges from the gorge and continues its descent through the valley. You pass through Stalden, which is known as the village of bridges because of the more than 15 bridges that cross the rivers here. Even from the train, you can see these bridges spanning the water at different heights, some stone and ancient, others modern concrete, all of them essential for connecting the scattered settlements in this mountainous terrain. Higher up on the mountainside, you might glimpse Visberterminen, Sitting at 1,150 meters, this village is famous for having the highest vineyards in Europe. Yes, vineyards. Even here in the high Alps, the slopes face south, catching maximum sunlight, and the particular conditions here produce a distinctive white wine called Haida, sometimes called the pearl of alpine wines. It seems almost impossible, looking at all this snow. But come summer, those steep slopes will be covered in grapevines, their roots somehow finding purchase in the rocky soil, their leaves soaking up the intense alpine sun. The descent continues, and you notice the landscape changing subtly. The valley is widening now, the mountains stepping back a bit. There are more trees, mostly conifers, but a few hardy deciduous trees as well, their bare branches creating delicate patterns against the snow. The villages are slightly larger, with more modern buildings mixed in among the traditional chalets. You're approaching the main Rhone Valley, the great trench that divides the Valais Alps, and with it comes your first major stop, Brig. Brig appears ahead as the train rounds a curve, spread across the valley where several routes converge. This is a town rather than a village, with a population of around 12,000, and it has a completely different character from Zermatt, where Zermatt is isolated and exclusive. Brig is a crossroads, a meeting point, a place where north-south routes over the Simplon Pass meet east-west routes through the Rhone Valley. It's a working town, not just a resort, and it has been an important trading center for centuries. The name Brig comes from the Celtic word briga, meaning hill fortress, and people have lived in this spot for thousands of years because of its strategic location. But the town you see from the train was largely shaped by one man, Caspar von Stockalper, who lived in the 17th century and became fabulously wealthy through trade over the alpine passes. His legacy dominates Brig's skyline, the Stockalper Palace, the largest private building of the 17th century. Even from the train, you can see this remarkable building with its three distinctive onion-domed towers built between 1658 and 1678. The palace is a testament to one man's ambition and wealth. Stockalper made his fortune by controlling the transit of goods over the Simplon Pass, particularly salt, which was essential for food preservation in the days before refrigeration. He built infrastructure, organized transport with hundreds of mules, and essentially monopolized one of the most important trade routes in Europe. The palace he built was not just a home, but a warehouse, an administrative center, and a symbol of his power. The three towers of Stockalper Palace are named after the three magi, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. Each tower rises high above the building, topped with elaborate Baroque onion domes that would look more at home in Eastern Europe or Italy than in the Swiss Alps. But that's exactly the point. Stockalper was a man of international trade, and his palace reflected the various cultures he dealt with. The building also features a beautiful arcaded courtyard, 3 stories of elegant arches that create a space that's Mediterranean in feeling, despite being in the heart of the Alps. Today, the palace is open to visitors, and its rooms tell the story of alpine trade, of the hard winters when passes were closed and whole communities were cut off, of the summer when goods flowed over the mountains and fortunes were made, the meadows around the palace, green in summer, are white with snow now, creating a setting that makes the building look even more dramatic, like something from a winter fairy tale. But Brig is more than just one building. The town serves as the gateway to the Aletsch region, home to the Great Aletsch Glacier, the largest glacier in the Alps. This massive river of ice, 23 kilometers long and covering about 81 square kilometers, has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2001. While you can't see it from the train here, its presence shapes the landscape, the water from its melt feeding the Rhone River, which flows through the valley. Brig is also where the landscape begins to change character again. This is where the eternal ice of the high Alps transitions into the green valleys that characterize lower elevations. In winter, of course, those green valleys are white, but you can still see the difference. The mountains are a bit less dramatic, the valleys a bit wider, the villages more substantial. This is wine country too. The sunny slopes of the Valais produce some of Switzerland's best wines. And even in winter, you can see the terraced vineyards on the hillsides, their vines sleeping under the snow, waiting for spring. As the Glacier Express pauses in Brig, some passengers disembark, their journey ending here. Others board, beginning their journey either toward Zermatt or continuing with you toward the east. There's a brief burst of activity on the platform. Then the train is moving again, now heading up the Rhone Valley into a region called the Gams. The Gams Valley is a high alpine valley, and in winter, it transforms into something special. This is traditional winter sports country, famous for its cross-country skiing. The valley floor is relatively flat, and in winter, it's groomed with tracks that stretch for kilometers, allowing skiers to glide through a landscape of perfect white. The villages here are small and traditional. Their chalets built in the particular style of the Upper Valais. Dark wooden structures with small windows and overhanging roofs designed to shed the heavy snow loads that accumulate each winter. The train climbs steadily now, following the young Rhone River upstream. Yes, this is the same Rhone that will eventually flow through Lake Geneva and France to the Mediterranean. But here, it's just a mountain stream, tumbling over rocks, parts of it frozen in winter, creating ice sculptures that catch the light. The valley is narrowing again, and the mountains on both sides are closing in, becoming more dramatic with every kilometer. The villages you pass have wonderful names: Viesch, Münster, Gescheinen. Each one is a small world unto itself, communities that have lived in these mountains for centuries, learning to thrive in conditions that most people would find impossibly harsh. In winter, these villages can be cut off for days during heavy storms. Avalanches are a constant danger. The cold can be extreme, yet people not only survive here, they create thriving communities with their own traditions, their own dialects, their own ways of celebrating the seasons. You notice that many of the churches in these villages have particularly distinctive bell towers, tall and pointed, often with multiple tiers. These aren't just decorative. In the days before modern communication, church bells were the primary way to signal danger or call the community together. The height and design of these towers ensured that their sound could carry throughout the valley, alerting people to fires, floods, avalanches, or other emergencies. Now they mark the hours and call the faithful to services. Their sound carrying through the cold winter air with that particular clarity that only comes in mountain environments. The train continues its climb, and you realize you're getting higher, not just in altitude, but in character. The landscape is becoming more alpine, more extreme. The trees are mostly gone now, except for a few hardy specimens clinging to protected spots. The snow lies deeper, undisturbed except by the tracks of the occasional mountain hare or fox. The mountains on both sides are massive, their faces striped with avalanche paths, channels scoured by countless winter snowslides. And then, after passing through the village of Oberwald, the train enters the Furka Base Tunnel. This tunnel, 15.4 kilometers long, is one of the engineering marvels that makes the Glacier Express possible. Before it was opened in 1982, the Glacier Express couldn't operate year-round. In winter, the Furka Pass, at over 2,400 meters, was completely closed, impassable under meters of snow. The old railway line that crossed the pass had to shut down every winter, meaning there was no rail connection between the western and eastern parts of this route during the coldest months. The Furka Base Tunnel changed everything by boring through the mountain at an elevation of 1,500 meters. Engineers created a year-round route that bypassed all the problems of the high pass. The tunnel is long enough that you're in darkness for a significant time, and in that darkness, the train becomes a small moving bubble of light and warmth, carrying you through the heart of the mountain. If you think about it too much, it's almost overwhelming. You're inside solid rock with thousands of meters of mountain above you, traveling through a space that humans carved with determination and engineering skill. Occasionally, you might see cars and trucks on railway flat cars being shuttled through the tunnel. This is the Furka car loading service, which operates like a ferry for vehicles. Driving over the Furka Pass, when it's open, takes about 45 minutes. The train shuttle through the tunnel takes less than 20 minutes, and unlike the pass road, it operates all year. It's a practical reminder that these tunnels aren't just for tourists. They're vital infrastructure for people who live and work in these mountains. When the train emerges from the Furka tunnel, everything has changed. You're in a different valley now, heading not west, but east, not down, but starting to climb again. And ahead, visible through the panoramic windows, is one of the most dramatically situated mountain villages in all of Switzerland, Andermatt. Through the heart of the Alps, Brig to Andermatt expanded. Andermatt sits at an elevation of 1,444 meters in the Urseren Valley, and its location is extraordinary in ways that become clear as the train approaches. This is a crossroads, a meeting point of major alpine passes, a place where routes from 4 directions converge. To the south, the St. Gotthard Pass leads to Italy. To the west, the Furka Pass connects to the Valais. To the north, the Susten Pass provides access to central Switzerland. And to the east, which is the direction the Glacier Express will take, the Oberalp Pass leads toward Graubünden. For centuries, Andermatt was primarily known as a military town. The Swiss Army maintained one of its most important training grounds here, and the village's economy depended largely on the presence of soldiers. The military importance was strategic. From Andermatt, forces could quickly deploy to defend any of the major passes. The village had an essentially utilitarian character, functional rather than picturesque, busy rather than peaceful. But in recent years, Andermatt has undergone a remarkable transformation. Egyptian investor Sami Sawiris initiated an ambitious development project called Andermatt Royce, which has added luxury hotels, apartments, a concert hall, and an 18-hole golf course to the village. The Chetty Andermatt, which opened in 2013, is now considered one of the finest hotels in Switzerland, drawing a new kind of visitor to what was once primarily a military town. What's remarkable about this development is how carefully it has been executed. Every new building was designed by a different architect, ensuring variety rather than uniformity. But all the architects were given strict guidelines to respect traditional alpine architecture. The result is a village that feels both modern and timeless, where contemporary design and centuries-old traditions coexist harmoniously. The main square, Piazza Gottardo, is car-free and surrounded by buildings that could be old or new. It's hard to tell, which is exactly the intent. From the train, you can see both the old village and the new developments. The historic center features traditional buildings with thick stone foundations and upper stories built of dark, weathered wood. Many of these structures date back hundreds of years. Their small windows and sturdy construction, speaking of harsh winters and the need for shelter. The Church of Saint Peter and Paul, with its distinctive onion-domed tower, is a local landmark that has stood since the 15th century, though it has been rebuilt and modified many times. The River Reuss flows through Andermatt, and even in winter, you can hear its voice, the constant gurgle and rush of water that has carved this valley over countless millennia. The river is one of 4 that rise in this region, which has earned the area the nickname Water Castle of Europe. The Rhine, the Rhone, the Reuss, and the Ticino all have their sources within a small radius of Andermatt, their waters eventually flowing to 4 different seas: the North Sea, the Mediterranean, the Adriatic, and the Black Sea. Standing here, you're at a hydrological crossroads as significant as the transportation crossroads. The Urzerin Valley, where Andermatt sits, has its own particular character. It's a high valley, surrounded by mountains, but relatively flat at its center, and in winter, it becomes a vast snowfield broken only by the villages and the dark ribbon of the river. The valley gets enormous amounts of snow. This is one of the most snow-sure areas in Switzerland, which is saying something. The winter sports facilities around Andermatt, including the Gemstock and Netschen areas, offer some of the most challenging skiing in the country, with steep slopes and reliable powder snow that attracts serious skiers and snowboarders. But Andermatt is about more than just winter sports. The village museum, housed in a traditional patrician house, tells the story of this valley, the tough life of subsistence farming in the mountains, the importance of the trade routes, the legends and myths that grew up around these passes. One of the most enduring tales involves the Devil's Bridge, the Teufelsbrücke, which spans the Schöllenen Gorge just north of Andermatt. The legend tells that the people of the Urzerin Valley wanted to build a bridge across the treacherous gorge to improve access to the north. But the gorge was so deep and the walls so steep that no human engineering could span it. In their desperation, according to the story, they struck a bargain with the devil. He would build the bridge, and in exchange, he would claim the soul of the first being to cross it. The devil built an impressive bridge in a single night. But when the villagers saw what he'd done, they were clever. Instead of sending a person across first, they sent a goat. The devil, furious at being tricked, supposedly tried to destroy the bridge with a boulder. The boulder missed, and local tradition holds that a massive rock by the roadside today is the very stone from the legend. The real history of the Devil's Bridge is only slightly less dramatic than the legend. Several bridges have stood at this site over the centuries, each one crucial for travel through these mountains. The current bridge dates from 1958, but you can still see the older bridges below it, including a dramatic stone arch from the 13th century. The gorge itself is spectacular, with the River Reuss thundering through a narrow channel carved through solid rock, the water crashing over boulders and creating a constant roar that echoes off the walls. The Schellenen Gorge represents one of the great challenges of alpine travel. Before bridges and tunnels made it passable, this gorge was a major barrier to north-south trade. The old St. Gotthard Pass route had to find a way through, and the solution involved not just bridges, but also platforms cut into the sheer rock walls, paths that were as dangerous as they were essential. Countless traders, soldiers, and travelers lost their lives in this gorge over the centuries, victims of avalanches, rockfalls, or simple missteps on the treacherous paths. Today, multiple routes pass through the Schellenen Gorge: the modern highway, the older mountain road, and the railway, each of them tunneling through or bridging over the obstacles that made this passage so dangerous in earlier times. The engineering required is formidable. Even with modern technology, maintaining these routes through winter is a constant battle against avalanches, rockfalls, and extreme weather. As the Glacier Express prepares to leave Andermatt, continuing its journey eastward, you're about to enter what many consider the most spectacular section of the entire route. The train will climb from Andermatt's elevation of 1,444 meters to 2,033 meters at the Oberalp Pass, the highest point of the entire journey. This climb of nearly 600 meters takes place over a relatively short distance, requiring the use of rack and pinion technology to help the train maintain its grip on the steep grades. The rack railway system, called a cogwheel railway, adds an extra rail between the normal tracks. This rail has teeth, and the train has a gear that engages with these teeth, preventing it from sliding backward on steep gradients and providing extra traction for the climb. You can hear the difference when the train engages the rack system, a slightly different rhythm to the wheels, a more deliberate pace as the engine works harder against gravity. The ascent from Andermatt begins almost immediately after leaving the station. The train follows the valley eastward, with the terrain rising steadily on both sides. You can see the old Oberalp Pass road winding up the mountainside, closed to vehicle traffic in winter, but used by cross-country skiers and winter hikers. The road appears and disappears through the snow, sometimes visible as a clear track, other times buried so deeply that only markers along its edge show where it runs. The landscape here takes on an increasingly austere beauty. You're above the tree line now, in a world of rock and snow and ice. The mountains on both sides are massive, their faces showing the work of glaciers that shaped them over countless ice ages. You can see the striations in the rock, the polished surfaces that speak of ice rivers grinding past, the piles of moraine that mark where glaciers once ended. This is a landscape still being shaped by ice, still changing, though so slowly that it seems eternal. Winter in this high realm is absolute. The snow lies meters deep, sculpted by the wind into forms that are almost abstract. Where the wind sweeps across exposed areas, it creates sastrugi, wave-like ridges in the snow surface that look like frozen waves on a frozen ocean. In protected spots, the snow accumulates in smooth drifts, perfect and unmarked. The sun on the snow is blindingly bright, and you understand why people who live in these mountains often have what's called snow blindness, wrinkles around their eyes from squinting against the glare. Occasionally, you might see signs of wildlife. A line of tracks crosses the snow, probably a mountain hare, its oversized feet acting like snowshoes, allowing it to bound across the surface. Or the larger, more widely spaced tracks of a red deer, one of the few large mammals that stays active at these elevations in winter. These animals have evolved remarkable adaptations for life in the mountains. Their metabolisms slow in winter, conserving energy. Their fur thickens dramatically, providing insulation against the cold. They know where to find food when everything is buried under snow. Protected slopes where the wind keeps the snow thin, places where shrubs protrude above the snowpack, south-facing areas where the sun melts the snow faster. Birds are scarcer in winter at these elevations, but you might see ravens, those intelligent blackbirds that seem to thrive in the harshest conditions. Ravens are year-round residents in the Alps, and they've learned to take advantage of human presence. Where ski resorts operate, ravens gather, hoping for scraps from picnickers. Where trains pass through, they've learned to check the areas near stations for dropped food. They're remarkably clever birds, capable of using tools, remembering human faces, and even playing games in the snow. The train continues its steady climb, each meter of altitude bringing you closer to the roof of this journey. The air is noticeably thinner now. If you were to step outside, you'd feel it immediately. The cold would be more biting. Your breath would come faster. Any exertion would be harder. But inside the heated, pressurized comfort of the panoramic carriage, you're insulated from these harsh realities, able to appreciate the beauty without experiencing the danger. And then, rounding a curve, climbing a final grade, the train reaches the summit of the Oberalp Pass at 2,033 meters above sea level. This is the highest point of the Glacier Express journey. The train slows, almost stopping, giving everyone time to take in the scene. And what a scene it is. The roof of the journey, Oberalp Pass and beyond. The Oberalp Pass in winter is a place of such pure, distilled beauty that it almost defies description. You're standing, or rather sitting, on the roof of this part of the Alps, surrounded by a 360-degree panorama of snow-covered peaks that seems to extend to the edge of the world. The sky at this elevation is a deeper, more intense blue than at lower altitudes, and the sun, even when it's cold enough to freeze water instantly, feels more powerful here, its rays unfiltered by the thick atmosphere of the lowlands. The centerpiece of the pass is the Oberalp Sea, a small alpine lake that in winter is completely frozen and buried under meters of snow. In summer, this lake is a brilliant blue-green, its waters fed by snowmelt, its surface reflecting the surrounding peaks. But in winter, you might not even know there's a lake here. The entire area is one continuous expanse of white, the lake indistinguishable from the surrounding snowfields except for the slightly gentler contour of the depression it occupies. And then there's the lighthouse. Yes, a lighthouse. Here at 2,000 meters in the Swiss Alps, hundreds of kilometers from any ocean. It stands near the pass, painted red and white, about 2.5 meters tall, looking decidedly out of place in this mountain landscape. But the lighthouse has a purpose beyond the whimsical. It marks the location of Lake Thoma, the official source of the Rhine River, which lies a bit higher up the mountain from the pass. The Rhine, one of Europe's great rivers, begins its nearly 1,300-kilometer journey here in these high Alps from Lake Thoma, which is really just a small mountain tarn. Water flows down through Graubünden, eventually joining other streams to form the Rhine proper. The river then flows north through Switzerland, forms part of the border between Switzerland and Liechtenstein, then between Switzerland and Austria, then through or along Germany, France, and the Netherlands, before finally emptying into the North Sea at Rotterdam. The lighthouse at Oberalp Pass has a twin at the Rhine's mouth in the Netherlands, symbolically linking the river's source and its end. It's a reminder of how these mountains, remote and isolated as they seem, are connected to the wider world through water. The rain and snow that falls on these peaks will eventually make its way to the sea. But the journey will take years, flowing through lakes and over waterfalls, through cities and industrial areas, past vineyards and forests, connecting mountains to ocean in a continuous cycle that has repeated for millions of years. The view from Oberalp Pass extends in all directions, each vista offering its own dramatic scenery. To the west, you can look back along the valley you've just climbed, seeing the route of the railway descending toward Andermatt, which is now far below. The valley looks like a miniature model from up here, the buildings tiny, the roads and railways just thin lines across the landscape. Beyond Andermatt, you can see the peaks that surround it, including the Gemstock and the Galenstock, both over 3,000 meters high, their faces covered in the eternal snow of year-round glaciers. To the east, the view shows where you're going, the descent into the Surselva Valley, which will lead eventually to Decentis and beyond. The valley here is steep-sided and narrow, and you can see how the railway will wind its way down, following the terrain, using every bit of engineering skill to maintain a manageable gradient. In the far distance, if visibility is good, you might see the next range of mountains, the Glarner Alps, their peaks rising against the horizon. To the north and south, the views are of pure mountain wilderness, Peak after peak rises in serried ranks, each one slightly different in character, each one beautiful in its own way. Some are sharp and rocky, their faces too steep for snow to accumulate. Others are rounded and white, completely covered in snow and ice. You can see glaciers nestled in north-facing cirques, their surfaces wrinkled and crevassed, looking like frozen rivers that have been stopped mid-flow. The quality of light at this elevation is extraordinary. The thin, dry air means there's very little haze or humidity to scatter the light. Everything appears sharp-edged, hyper-real, more vivid than seems possible. Colors are intense: the blue of the sky, the white of the snow, the gray of exposed rock, the dark green of the scattered pine trees at the limits of the tree line far below. Shadows are ink black and precisely defined. When clouds do form, they often form below you, filling the valleys while you remain in brilliant sunshine, creating the phenomenon known as a sea of fog, where you look down on the tops of clouds as if you were in an airplane. The temperature at Oberalp Pass in winter is typically well below freezing, often dropping to -10 or -20 Celsius. And that's not accounting for wind chill. The wind at these exposed heights can be fierce, sweeping across the pass with nothing to slow it down, picking up loose snow and creating ground blizzards even when the sky is clear. These winds can create fantastic snow formations, cornices that overhang cliff edges like frozen waves, wind lips that curl over ridges, and in extreme cases, entire snowdrifts that seem to defy gravity, suspended in mid-air by the constant force of the wind. But inside the Glacier Express, you're warm and comfortable, able to appreciate this extreme environment without experiencing its harsher aspects. The panoramic windows provide an unobstructed view, and because the train moves so slowly through this section, you have time to really see and absorb the landscape. This isn't a quick glimpse from a speeding vehicle. It's a sustained observation, a chance to watch how the light changes on the peaks, to notice the subtle color variations in the snow, to spot the small details that make this landscape unique. Some passengers use this time to enjoy the meal service that the Glacier Express is famous for. The train offers lunch served at your seat, and there's something almost surreal about sitting in comfort, enjoying Swiss cuisine, while surrounded by one of the most extreme landscapes in Europe. The menu typically features Swiss specialties, perhaps a beef stroganoff with rusty, or a traditional alpine macaroni with cheese and onions, or for those with lighter appetites, salads and regional dishes. The wine list emphasizes Swiss wines, particularly whites from the Valais region you've just passed through. The meal service is executed with Swiss precision and attention to detail. The tables in the panoramic carriages are designed specifically for this purpose, with special holders for the distinctive tilted wine glasses that the Glacier Express is famous for. These glasses have angled bases that compensate for the train's movement and the steep gradients, keeping your wine level even when the table itself is tilted. There's such a clever and distinctive design that many passengers buy them as souvenirs. As the train begins its descent from Oberalp Pass, you immediately notice how different the eastern side is from the western approach. The descent is steep, and the train uses its rack and pinion system to control the speed, preventing any dangerous acceleration. The braking is smooth and continuous, so subtle that you barely notice it. But without it, the train would quickly exceed safe speeds on these grades. The landscape changes as you descend. You're entering a different valley system now, leaving behind the headwaters of the Rhine and following the valley that will lead to Descentis and beyond. This is the Surselva, which translates roughly as above the forest, a name that makes sense as you look at the landscape. The upper reaches of the valley are indeed above the tree line, but as you descend, trees begin to appear, first as scattered individuals clinging to sheltered spots, then as small copses, and finally as true forests of pine and spruce. These high-altitude forests have a particular character. The trees are often twisted and gnarled, shaped by the wind and the weight of winter snow. In some places, you see what's called krummholz, or crooked wood, where trees grow more horizontally than vertically, spreading along the ground to avoid the worst of the winter winds. These trees might be decades or even centuries old, but stand only a meter or two high, their growth stunted by the harsh conditions. Snow covers everything at this time of year, but you can still see the structure of the landscape, the steepness of the slopes, the areas prone to avalanches visible as wide swaths of open ground where trees can't establish themselves because of the regular winter slides, the protected gullies where vegetation can survive. This is a landscape that anyone who lives here must read carefully, understanding which slopes are safe and which are dangerous, which areas to avoid in winter, where the avalanche paths run. The first village you encounter on the descent is Zermatt, a tiny hamlet that seems to cling to the mountainside. It's little more than a few buildings, a chapel, and what used to be a hotel that served travelers crossing the pass in the days before the Glacier Express made the journey comfortable. In summer, Zermatt is a starting point for hikes into the surrounding mountains. In winter, it's a quiet place, its few buildings almost buried in snow, its residents living the kind of isolated mountain life that has characterized these valleys for centuries. The descent continues, and the valley widens slightly. You're following the young River Rhine again, though here it goes by its Romansh name, the Rhine da Tuma. This is a different Rhine from the massive commercial waterway. It becomes farther north. Here, it's a mountain torrent, tumbling over rocks, creating white water even in winter, where it flows fast enough to avoid freezing. In places, the ice creates fantastic formations, icicles hanging from overhanging rocks, shelves of ice extending from the banks, the water flowing beneath like a secret river under a crystal ceiling. The villages become more frequent as you descend, each one a small cluster of traditional buildings built in the distinctive Romansh style. These are stone and wood structures with thick walls to insulate against the winter cold, small windows to minimize heat loss, and steeply pitched roofs to shed the heavy snow. Many of the buildings are painted white with decorative murals on their facades, religious scenes or geometric patterns that add color to the landscape. This is Romansh country, one of the linguistic and cultural heartlands of this ancient language. Romansh is one of Switzerland's 4 official languages, along with German, French, and Italian, but it's spoken by the smallest number of people, probably fewer than 40,000 as a first language, it's a Romance language, descended from the Latin, spoken by the Romans who conquered these mountains 2,000 years ago, but it has evolved in isolation, developing its own unique character and vocabulary. There are actually 5 different written forms of Romansh, each associated with a different valley system, and the differences between them can be significant. It's a testament to the way these mountain valleys have historically been isolated from each other, developing their own cultures and traditions despite being geographically close. In recent decades, there have been efforts to create a unified written Romansh called Romansh Grishin to help preserve and promote the language, but the traditional regional variants are still widely used. You hear announcements on the train in Romansh, as well as German, French, Italian, and English, a reminder of Switzerland's multilingual character. It's remarkable how this small country has managed to maintain 4 language communities, each with its own media, schools, and cultural institutions, while still functioning as a unified nation. The train itself is a symbol of this unity, connecting different linguistic and cultural regions, making it easy to travel from German-speaking Zermatt through French-speaking parts of the Valais, Italian-influenced areas near the southern passes, and Romansh-speaking valleys, like this one. As the train continues its descent, the next major destination comes into view, Disentis, also known by its Romansh name, Muster. This is the largest community in the Surselva region, with a population of around 2,000, and it's dominated by one of the most impressive buildings you'll see on this entire journey, the Disentis Abbey. The Benedictine monastery of Disentis is visible from miles away, its white Baroque facade and twin towers rising above the village like a declaration of faith and endurance. According to tradition, this abbey was founded in the year 720 by an Irish monk named Sigisbert and a local named Placidus, though the exact details of its earliest years remain shrouded in the mists of history. What is certain is that for well over 1,000 years, Benedictine monks have maintained their presence here, keeping alive a tradition of prayer, work, and learning through countless wars, plagues, fires, and changes in the world outside their walls. The current monastery buildings date primarily from the 17th and 18th centuries, rebuilt after a fire destroyed much of the earlier complex. The Church of Saint Martin is a masterpiece of Baroque architecture, its interior a riot of white and gold, with elaborate stucco work, dramatic religious paintings, and an impressive organ. The monastery church is designed not just to house worship, but to inspire awe, to give physical form to spiritual concepts, to create a space where the earthly and divine seem to meet. But the monastery is more than just a beautiful building. It has always been a center of learning and culture in this isolated mountain region. The Abbey's library contains thousands of volumes, including rare medieval manuscripts written in Latin and Romansh, chronicles of mountain life and history, theological works, and early printed books. The monks have long played a role in preserving and promoting Romansh language and culture, producing dictionaries, grammars, and religious texts in the language. The monastery also runs a school, one of the oldest boarding schools in Switzerland, which has educated generations of young people from the surrounding valleys and beyond. The school combines traditional values with modern education, and it has produced many notable alumni who have gone on to contribute to Swiss society in various fields. In winter, you can see the school buildings clustered near the monastery, and sometimes you'll see students out in the snow, taking advantage of the nearby skiing and winter sports facilities. Desenti itself is a charming village that seems to embrace both its ancient heritage and its modern role as a winter sports destination. The old center features narrow streets lined with traditional buildings, many of them painted white with colorful shutters and decorative elements. There are small shops selling local products, the distinctive cheeses of the Surselva region, cured meats from mountain farms, handicrafts made by local artisans. In winter, the shops also cater to skiers and tourists, offering equipment rentals, winter clothing, and souvenirs. The village sits at the confluence of two rivers, the Vorderrhein, Front Rhine, and the Mittelser Rhine, and this meeting of waters has made it a natural crossroads for centuries. The Glacier Express station at Decentis is an interchange point where the railway operated by the Matterhorn Gotthard Bahn meets the railway operated by the Radian Railway, the two companies that jointly run the Glacier Express. For passengers, this is seamless. The train simply continues on the same track. But technically, you're switching railway companies here, a detail that matters for operational and historical reasons, but not for the experience of the journey. From Decentis, the Glacier Express continues its descent, now following the Vorderrhein as it flows eastward toward the eventual meeting with the Hinterrhein that will create the main Rhine. The valley here is becoming wider and, in a relative sense, more gentle, though it's still undeniably mountainous. The slopes on either side rise steeply, covered in forest, where the elevation and slope allow, bare rock and snow where they don't. The railway line here is a marvel of engineering in its own right. It clings to the mountainside, sometimes on narrow ledges, sometimes in tunnels, always following the contours of the terrain with the kind of precision that 19th and early 20th century engineers achieved through surveying skills and sheer determination. There are stretches where the line is carved into the rock face, with the mountain rising sheer above and dropping away steeply below. There are sections where avalanche shelters cover the track, concrete and steel structures designed to let the snow slide harmlessly over the railway rather than sweeping it away. As you travel through this section, you begin to notice that the landscape is changing in subtle ways. The villages are becoming slightly more frequent, slightly larger. There are more signs of agriculture, fields that will be hay meadows in summer, now just smooth expanses of snow, and here and there the distinctive stepped terracing that allows farming on steep slopes. You see more roads, more evidence of the modern world penetrating these mountain valleys. And then, quite suddenly, the valley makes a dramatic transformation. The mountains pull back, the space opens up, and you find yourself entering one of the most spectacular natural features of the Swiss Alps, the Rhine Gorge, often called the Ruinota in Romansch, or the Swiss Grand Canyon in marketing materials. The Rhine Gorge is a geological wonder, a landscape that looks more like the American Southwest than Switzerland. The gorge stretches for approximately 14 kilometers between Ilans and Reichenau, and it was created by a massive prehistoric event around 10,000 years ago. An enormous section of mountain collapsed in what geologists believe was one of the largest landslides in alpine history, blocking the valley and creating a natural dam. The Rhine River, flowing behind this massive barrier, eventually found a way through, cutting through the loose rock and creating the dramatic canyon you see today. The result is a gorge unlike anything else on this journey. The walls are striped with color, bands of white, gray, beige, and even reddish rock, each layer telling a story of ancient seas, continental collisions, and geological processes that unfolded over millions of years. These aren't the smooth, ice-carved walls of a typical alpine valley, but rough, jagged faces of fractured rock, pinnacles and towers that rise from the valley floor, enormous boulders scattered about like the playthings of giants. The Rhine River itself becomes a character here, no longer the small mountain stream of its upper reaches, but a substantial river. Its water, a distinctive milky turquoise color from the glacial silt it carries. In places, the river flows fast and deep, cutting channels through the rock. In others, it spreads out over gravel beds, braiding into multiple channels around islands of rock and vegetation. Even in winter, parts of the river remain unfrozen, the water too fast and too turbulent to ice over, though ice does form along the calmer edges and in backwaters, creating intricate patterns of white and blue. The train follows the river through the gorge, sometimes on one side, sometimes on the other, the track winding to follow the available terrain. This section of railway is considered one of the most scenic in all of Switzerland, and that's saying something in a country famous for scenic railways. The changing perspectives as the train rounds each curve reveal new vistas. Sometimes you're high above the river, looking down on its course. Other times, you're practically at water level, with the gorge walls towering above. In winter, the gorge has a particular austere beauty. The rock faces are striped with snow in protected ledges and crevices. Icicles hang from overhangs, some of them meters long, catching the sunlight and glowing like crystal. The vegetation that clings to the gorge walls, mostly hardy pines and shrubs, is frosted with snow and ice. The overall effect is of a landscape frozen in time, a place where the usual softness of winter snow can't quite disguise the raw geological power that shaped this place. The gorge is home to unique plants and animals that thrive in this particular microclimate. The rock faces provide nesting sites for birds of prey. Golden eagles and peregrine falcons both hunt in the gorge, taking advantage of the thermals that rise from the river. Ravens are common, as are alpine choughs, blackbirds with yellow beaks that swirl around the rock towers in acrobatic flocks. In summer, the gorge is a paradise for rock climbers and botanists, but even in winter, its wild character is evident. There are legends associated with the Rhine Gorge, stories of giants and avalanches, of entire villages swallowed by the land. Some scholars suggest these legends might preserve folk memories of the actual landslide that created the gorge, an event so massive that it could have been witnessed and passed down through oral tradition by people living in these valleys 10,000 years ago. The stories tell of mountains that walked, of the earth opening up, of rivers changing their courses overnight. While the exact connection between folklore and geological events is difficult to prove, modern geology confirms that something very much like these dramatic tales actually did happen. As the train progresses through the gorge, you pass through the village of Versum, perched on a ledge above the river. From here, there are viewing platforms that offer spectacular vistas of the gorge, but seeing it from the train provides a different perspective, a moving viewpoint that reveals the landscape's three-dimensional complexity. You see how the gorge twists and turns, how the river has sought out every weakness in the rock, how erosion continues to shape this landscape even now. And then, as dramatically as it began, the Rhine Gorge ends, the walls pull back, the valley widens, and the landscape returns to a more typical alpine character. Ahead lies the town of Reichenau, where the Vorderrhein and Hinterrhein finally meet to form the Rhine proper. Beyond Reichenau, just a short distance now, is the city of Chur, the capital of Graubünden Canton and the oldest city in Switzerland. Engineering marvels, Chur to Filisur. Chur presents itself as something different from anything you've seen so far on this journey. This is a city, not a village or town, with archaeological evidence of human presence stretching back more than 5,000 years. The Romans established an important settlement here called Curia Retorum, making it the capital of the province of Rhaetia Prima. The name Chur derives from this Roman origin, and the city's strategic location has ensured its continued importance through the centuries. With a population of around 35,000, Chur is small by most standards, but in this mountainous region, it's a major center of commerce, culture, and administration. The city sits at an elevation of 585 meters, which makes it the lowest point on the Glacier Express route, a detail that seems counterintuitive given how mountainous the landscape remains. But you're in a major valley now, the Rhine Valley, which will eventually lead all the way north to Lake Constance and beyond. From the train, you can see Chur spreading across the valley floor and climbing the lower slopes of the surrounding mountains. The old town, the historic core of the city, is visible with its church spires and clustered buildings. The Cathedral of St. Mary of the Assumption rises prominently, its Gothic tower a landmark that has dominated the city's skyline since the 12th century. The cathedral is built on the site of even earlier churches, with some elements dating back to the 8th century. Layers upon layers of Christian history built one on top of the other. The old town of Chur is a pedestrian zone, a maze of narrow medieval streets lined with buildings that span centuries of architectural styles. There are buildings with painted facades showing religious scenes or elaborate trompe-l'oeil decorations. There are arcades and courtyards, fountains and small squares where markets have been held for centuries. The city has managed to preserve its historic character while adapting to modern needs, a balance that many historic cities struggle to achieve. Chur is also an important railway hub, which is why the Glacier Express stops here. The city is served by numerous rail lines that connect it to Zurich, St. Gallen, and points north, as well as to the various valleys of Graubünden. For the Glacier Express, Chur represents both a destination and a starting point. Many passengers begin or end their journey here rather than going all the way to St. Moritz or Zermatt. The city offers excellent connections to the rest of Switzerland and beyond, making it a practical place to join or leave the train. But for those continuing to St. Moritz, the most spectacular section of the journey is still ahead. After departing Chur, the Glacier Express begins climbing again, this time following the Albula River upstream into the mountains. This section of railway, the Albula Line, is considered one of the greatest achievements of mountain railway engineering in the world. In 2008, it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, along with the Bernina Line, recognized as an outstanding example of how engineering and landscape can harmonize. The Albula Line was completed in 1903. After 5 years of intensive construction work, the challenge facing the engineers was enormous. The railway needed to climb from Thassus at 720 meters elevation to the Albula Tunnel at approximately 1,800 meters, gaining over 1,000 meters of altitude in a relatively short distance. The mountain terrain offered no easy route. Deep gorges cut across the path. Steep slopes rose on all sides. Rock faces and unstable ground complicated every decision. The solution the engineers developed was brilliant. They would use the mountain's own contours, spiraling and looping to gain altitude gradually, rather than trying to climb directly. The result is a railway line that includes 6 major viaducts, 2 helical tunnels where the track loops inside the mountain, 3 spiral tunnels where the track curves back on itself, and numerous smaller bridges and tunnels. The entire line is a work of art in engineering, each element precisely calculated to maintain a manageable gradient while still achieving the necessary altitude gain. As the train departs Chur and begins this climb, you immediately enter a landscape of increasing drama. The valley narrows, becoming the Domleschg Valley, with castle-topped crags rising above vineyards and forests. This valley has been inhabited and contested for millennia, and the ruins of numerous castles and fortifications dot the hillsides, remnants of the feudal era when local lords controlled their territories from these strategic heights. The Narane passes through small stations with names that reflect the region's Romansch heritage: Rothenbrunnen, Rodels, Rialta, Kazis. Each stop is a tiny community, a few buildings clustered around the station, connected to the wider world, primarily by this railway. In earlier times, these villages were days of difficult travel from major cities. Now they're a couple of hours from Zurich, yet they retain a distinct mountain character, a sense of being places apart. The climbing begins in earnest as the train approaches Thassus, a small town at the foot of the Sirius Mountains. From here, the railway enters the Shin Gorge, a dramatic cleft in the mountains through which both the railway and the highway must pass. The gorge is narrow and deep, its walls rising steeply on both sides, and the river Albula tumbles through it in a series of cascades and rapids. The railway engineers solved the problem of the gorge by building a viaduct across it at a point where the walls narrow. The Solis Viaduct, completed in 1902, spans the gorge at a height of 89 meters above the river. Its 11 stone arches carrying the railway across a gap of 164 meters. When it was built, It was the longest span viaduct in the world, and it remains an impressive sight even now, its limestone arches blending naturally with the rock walls of the gorge. Crossing the Slowest viaduct is a memorable moment on the journey. The train slows slightly, and you can look down into the depths of the gorge, seeing the river far below, the rock walls stretching up on either side, the forests clinging to impossible slopes. The sense of height is palpable, even from inside the train. You realize that you're suspended in midair, held up by stone arches built more than a century ago, and yet you feel completely secure, a testament to the skill of the engineers and stonemasons who created this structure. Beyond the Slowest viaduct, the line continues to climb through a series of tunnels and bridges. You're ascending the Albula Valley now, following the river upstream toward its source in the high mountains. The landscape is heavily forested, mostly with spruce and larch, the dark green of the conifers, punctuated by the bare gray trunks of the larches, which, unlike most conifers, lose their needles in winter. The villages you pass are quintessentially alpine, their buildings showing the distinctive Engadin style of architecture that characterizes this part of Switzerland. These are substantial stone buildings with deep-set small windows, thick walls, and elaborate sgraffito decorations. Sgraffito is a decorative technique where layers of colored plaster are applied to a wall. Then patterns are scratched through the outer layers to reveal the colors beneath. The result can be simple geometric patterns or elaborate scenes showing local legends, coats of arms, or religious themes. As the train climbs higher, you notice the changes in the landscape. The trees are becoming smaller and more sparse. The snow lies deeper, undisturbed by any melting. The villages are smaller, more isolated, their inhabitants living in conditions that would seem impossibly remote to most people. These are places where winter means true isolation, where heavy storms can cut off access for days, where people need to be self-sufficient and prepared for any eventuality. And then, after passing through the village of Tiefenkastel, the railway enters what is perhaps the most extraordinary section of the entire Albula line, the stretch between Preda and Bergen. This is where the engineering reaches its peak of complexity and ingenuity. The challenge here was particularly severe. The railway needed to gain over 400 meters of altitude in a horizontal distance of just 5 kilometers. A direct route would require gradients far too steep for any train to climb. So the engineers created a route that loops and spirals, using the mountain itself as a 3-dimensional canvas for their work. The train enters the first of the helical tunnels, curving into the mountain and beginning to spiral upward inside the rock. You can feel the continuous curve, the train always turning, always climbing. When you emerge from the tunnel, you're higher than when you entered, and you can sometimes see the track you were just on far below. Then the train crosses a viaduct, spans a gorge, enters another tunnel, continues to climb. This section includes the famous Landwasser Viaduct, one of the most photographed railway structures in the world, and it's easy to see why. The viaduct is a masterpiece. 6 stone arches carrying the railway across the Landwasser River and valley at a height of 65 meters. But what makes it truly extraordinary is how it ends. The viaduct leads directly into a tunnel mouth, carved into a sheer rock face. the tracks disappearing into the mountain at the precise point where the viaduct meets the cliff. The Landwasser Viaduct was built between 1901 and 1902, designed by engineer Alexander Akatos and constructed by Müller and Zierleiter. The structure spans 136 meters in length and rises 65 meters above the river. Its 6 limestone arches carrying the railway with remarkable grace. Its construction was a remarkable achievement for its time. Unlike most bridges of that era, it was built without conventional scaffolding. Instead, the builders used cranes positioned on the growing piers themselves, lifting the stones directly from the valley floor. The limestone blocks were quarried nearby, shaped on site, and fitted together with extraordinary precision. The viaduct curves as it crosses the valley, following a radius of exactly 100 meters, the minimum curve used anywhere on the Albula line. This curve means that passengers on the train can look forward and see the front of the train, then the viaduct, then the tunnel entrance, all at once, creating a dramatic perspective that's utterly unique. The viaduct appears in countless photographs, paintings, and films, usually showing the distinctive red train crossing the pale limestone bridge with mountains as a backdrop. The tunnel that the viaduct leads into is the Landwasser Tunnel, 216 meters long, bored through solid rock to continue the railway's route. The alignment was planned so precisely that the viaduct and tunnel form a continuous curve, the train never needing to straighten out. This kind of precision was extraordinary for the early 1900s, when surveying instruments were far less sophisticated than today's GPS and laser systems. After emerging from the Landwasser Tunnel, the train continues through the village of Filisur, a charming mountain community that sits at the heart of the Graubünden Alps. Filisur has been a waypoint for travelers for centuries, first as a stop on mountain trade routes, later as a railway junction. The village retains its traditional character, with Engadin-style houses clustered around the church and the station, their facades decorated with the intricate sgraffito work that characterizes this region. From Filisur, passengers can connect to trains heading to Davos, the famous winter sports resort and site of the annual World Economic Forum. But the Glacier Express continues its climb toward its ultimate destination, entering a section of the route that showcases even more engineering marvels. The stretch from Filisur to Bergen includes several more tunnels and viaducts, but it's the section beyond Bergen that truly astonishes. Here, the railway performs what seems like an impossible feat, climbing through a series of loops and spirals that demonstrate what engineers call the art of the possible. The track winds back and forth across the mountain face, crossing itself at different levels, passing through the same alpine meadow 3 times at 3 different elevations. Some of these loops are visible to passengers. You can look out the window and see sections of track above or below you, sometimes close enough that you feel you could almost reach out and touch them. Other loops are hidden inside the mountain, helical tunnels where the track spirals up through the rock. The overall effect is disorienting in the best possible way. You lose track of which direction you're facing, but you can always feel the steady climb. The train working against gravity with the help of its rack and pinion system. The village of Bergen itself is worth noting. Sitting at 1,370 meters elevation in a widening of the valley, it's a traditional village that has embraced its role as a center for railway heritage. The Albula Railway Museum in Bergen tells the story of this remarkable line, with models showing how the various tunnels and viaducts work, displays of historical equipment, and explanations of the engineering challenges that were overcome. In summer, there's even a railway-themed trail that lets hikers follow the route of the train on foot, seeing the structures from different perspectives and understanding the landscape the engineers had to work with. Beyond Bergen, the railway continues its climb through Preda, the highest station on the Albula line at 1,792 meters. From here, the line enters the Albula Tunnel, 6 kilometers long, boring through the mountain at just over 1,800 meters elevation to emerge on the other side in a completely different valley system, the Engadin. The Albula Tunnel was the longest tunnel in Switzerland when it was completed in 1903, and it represented a massive undertaking. The tunnel was excavated from both ends simultaneously, with crews working toward each other through solid rock, the precision required to ensure that the two bores would meet perfectly in the middle, kilometers inside the mountain, was extraordinary, yet the margin of error when they met was just a few centimeters. Inside the tunnel, the train travels through what feels like a long period of darkness, the only light coming from inside the carriages and occasionally from ventilation shafts. But this darkness is temporary, and when you emerge on the eastern side, everything changes. You've crossed a watershed, left behind the Rhine system, and entered the valley of the Inn River, which flows eventually to the Danube and the Black Sea. You've also entered the Engadin, one of the most beautiful and distinctive regions of Switzerland. The Engadin Finale, arrival in St. Moritz. The Engadin Valley is immediately recognizable as something special, even from the first glimpses as you emerge from the Albula Tunnel. This is a high alpine valley, sitting at an average elevation of about 1,800 meters, which makes it one of the highest inhabited valleys in Europe. But unlike many high mountain valleys, which tend to be narrow and enclosed, the Engadin is surprisingly wide and open, with broad flat floors and gentle slopes that give it a spacious, airy character. The light in the Engadin is famous, often described as having a particular crystalline quality. This is partly due to the altitude. At 1,800 meters, the air is thinner and clearer than at lower elevations. It's also due to the geography. The valley runs northeast to southwest, and its orientation and width allow light to flood in, reducing shadows and creating an overall brightness that artists and photographers have celebrated for generations. The painter Giovanni Segantini spent the later years of his life in the Engadin, and his paintings capture this unique quality of light, the way it seems to make everything more vivid and alive. In winter, this special light combines with the snow to create a landscape of stunning purity. The Engadin gets ample snow, but it also gets more sunshine than many parts of the Alps. The valley boasts over 300 sunny days in per year, an exceptional figure for this elevation and latitude. The result is a winter landscape where brilliant blue skies and sparkling white snow create a contrast so vivid it almost hurts to look at without sunglasses. The Engadin is divided into two parts: the Upper Engadin, which includes Saint Moritz and extends toward the Italian border, and the Lower Engadin, which stretches northeast toward Austria. The Glacier Express route travels through the Upper Engadin, and this is the more famous and developed section, home to several world-renowned resorts. As the train descends from the Albula Tunnel into the valley, you immediately see evidence of this development. The landscape, while still dramatically mountainous, has been shaped by human presence in ways that are more subtle than in many alpine regions. The valley floor is relatively flat, and you can see how this has been used for agriculture and development. There are large meadows, which in summer are hayfields, but now lie under snow. There are villages that are more substantial than the tiny hamlets of the high passes, with proper infrastructure and a sense of permanence. The train passes through Bever, a village that serves as a local hub and offers connections to other parts of the Engadin. The village has a long history. There's evidence of Roman settlement here, and the parish church dates back to the medieval period. But like much of the Engadin, Bever has balanced its historical character with modern development, and it serves as a year-round destination for both winter sports enthusiasts and summer hikers. From Bever, the railway continues through landscape that becomes increasingly lake-dominated. This is one of the distinctive features of the Engadin. It has numerous lakes, from small tarns tucked into mountain cirques to substantial bodies of water that stretch for kilometers along the valley floor. In winter, these lakes freeze over completely, their surfaces covered with snow, becoming extensions of the land rather than separate features. But even covered in snow and ice, you can sense their presence. Slight depressions in the landscape, gentler contours that speak of water lying beneath the frozen surface. The train passes Lake Chamfer, one of the smallest, but also one of the most beautifully situated of the Engadin lakes. In summer, this lake is a favorite for swimming and paddleboarding. Its water's cold, but clean and enticing. In winter, it becomes a skating rink, and you might see people skating on its surface, taking advantage of the natural ice. The lake is surrounded by larch forests, and even in winter, when the larches are bare, their elegant forms create a lovely framing for the frozen water. Beyond Lake Chamfer lies Lake Saint Moritz, and beyond that, the town itself, Saint. Moritz announces itself gradually. First, you see the lake, a body of water about half a kilometer wide and stretching for a kilometer along the valley. Then, you see the buildings of Saint Moritz Bad, the lower part of the town, clustered around the southern end of the lake. And finally, rising on the sunny slope above the lake, you see Saint Moritzdorf, the main part of town. A dense collection of buildings climbing the mountainside, dominated by several large palace hotels whose distinctive silhouettes have become iconic. Saint Moritz has one of the most interesting histories of any resort in the Alps. Archaeological findings suggest people have been drawn to this area for its mineral springs for more than 3,000 years, possibly as far back as the Bronze Age. The springs, which produce iron-rich water, were believed to have healing properties, and the Romans are known to have established spa facilities here. But the modern history of St. Moritz as a resort begins in 1864, and it begins with a bet. Johannes Badrut, owner of the Kulm Hotel, had British guests who were visiting in summer and expressing concern about the long journey back to England before winter arrived. Badrut told them they should stay through the winter instead, and he made an audacious promise. If they didn't enjoy the winter in St. Moritz, if they found it unpleasant or boring, he would pay for their entire stay and their travel costs. But if they did enjoy it, they would pay their own way, and, he hoped, spread the word about winter in St. Moritz. The British guests accepted the bet and stayed. They discovered that St. Moritz in winter was extraordinary. The sun shone brilliantly. The snow was perfect. The air was invigorating. The mountain views were stunning. They could walk. They could skate on the frozen lake. They could toboggan. They could enjoy winter, not as something to be endured, but as something to be celebrated. They paid their bill happily and went back to Britain with stories of this wonderful discovery. Word spread quickly through British high society, and soon wealthy tourists were coming to St. Moritz specifically for winter, establishing the concept of the winter holiday. St. Moritz became the place to be seen during the winter social season. The British introduced various winter sports: ice skating, curling, bobsledding, skiing. The Cresta Run, a famous toboggan course, was built in 1884, largely by and for British visitors, and still operates today. One of the few places in the world where you can experience skeleton racing, riding a sled head first down an ice channel at speeds that can reach up to 140 kilometers per hour. St. Moritz hosted the Winter Olympics twice, in 1928 and 1948, cementing its status as a premier winter sports destination. The town developed infrastructure to support these events: ice rinks, ski runs, jumping hills, and bobsled tracks. Many of these facilities are still in use, making St. Moritz a place where elite athletes train and compete while tourists watch or try the same sports at a more leisurely pace. But St. Moritz is about more than just sports. It's about a certain style, a particular kind of luxury that manages to be both ostentatious and understated. The town is home to some of the most exclusive hotels in the world. Badrut's Palace Hotel, which has been family-owned since Johannes Badrut's time, is a legendary establishment that has hosted royalty, celebrities, and business leaders from around the world. The hotel dominates the skyline of St. Moritzdorf, its distinctive silhouette instantly recognizable, a vision of elegant Belle Epoque grandeur. Inside Badrut's Palace and the other grand hotels of St. Moritz, you find a world of refined luxury. There are restaurants with Michelin stars, bars where a simple drink might cost what a modest meal costs elsewhere, spas offering treatments that use local spring water and alpine herbs, shops selling jewelry, furs, and haute couture. The hotels employ staff who can arrange almost anything: helicopter skiing, private concerts, guided tours to locations that aren't open to the general public. But this luxury isn't flashy or crude. There's a certain restraint, a sense that true wealth doesn't need to announce itself loudly. The people you see in St. Moritz might be wearing designer ski clothes, but they're actually skiing, not just posing. The furs and jewelry are real, but worn with a casualness that suggests this is simply how one dresses. Nothing special. The conversations in the hotel bars might be in French, Italian, German, Russian, or English, flowing easily between languages as international elites mingle. St. Moritz also has a substantial cultural scene. The Segantini Museum houses the works of Giovanni Segantini, the Italian painter who made the Engadin his home and whose paintings capture the region's unique light and landscape. The museum building itself is distinctive, its design suggesting a tomb-like structure that some interpret as related to plans that were considered but never realized for Segantini's memorial. Inside, his large-scale paintings show alpine life, shepherds with their flocks, the play of light on snow-covered peaks, the harsh beauty of high mountain existence. The town hosts numerous cultural events throughout the year. The Snow Polo World Cup takes place on the frozen lake in January, a surreal spectacle of polo ponies galloping across the ice while spectators watch from heated tents, sipping champagne and watching this most British of sports adapted to alpine conditions, white turf. A series of horse races also held on the frozen lake attracts thousands of spectators in February. There are cricket matches on ice, a nod to the British origins of winter tourism here. Though cricket played on a frozen lake in the Alps has to be one of the more improbable sporting events anywhere. The lake itself becomes a focal point for St. Moritz's winter activities. Once it's frozen solid, which usually happens by December, it's groomed and maintained as a vast outdoor recreation area. There are tracks for cross-country skiing, lanes for skating, and areas marked off for various events. The ice is thick enough to support trucks and equipment, and elaborate structures are sometimes built directly on the ice. Pavilions for events, starting gates for horse races, even temporary restaurants and bars. Looking at the frozen lake from the train, you get a sense of its scale and the way it's integrated into the life of the town. The surrounding mountains create a dramatic backdrop, their slopes striped with ski runs, their peaks gleaming white against the blue sky. You can see cable cars climbing toward the skiing areas, tiny cabins carrying skiers and snowboarders to the heights where they'll begin their descents. St. Moritz has several major ski areas. Corviglia, accessed by funicular from St. Moritz-Dorf, offers wide, sunny runs and is the most popular with intermediate skiers. Korvach, on the opposite side of the valley, has steeper, more challenging terrain and includes night skiing. Diavoletza, farther from town, sits on a glacier and offers reliable snow conditions and dramatic high mountain skiing. Together, these areas provide over 350 kilometers of marked runs, served by more than 50 lifts. But skiing is just one activity among many in St. Moritz. The town caters to people who don't ski at all. There are winter hiking trails, paths cleared of snow that let you walk through the landscape without skis or snowshoes. There are opportunities for ice skating, curling, and snowshoeing. The shopping in St. Moritz rivals major cities, with boutiques from every major luxury brand: Cartier, Gucci, Prada, Bulgari, and many more. The main shopping street, Via Serlas, is a showcase of high-end retail in an alpine setting. Dining in St. Moritz ranges from traditional mountain restaurants serving fondue and raclette to cutting-edge modern cuisine at Michelin-starred establishments. Local specialties reflect the region's position at the intersection of Swiss, Italian, and Austrian influences. You might find dishes like pizzoccheri, a buckwheat pasta with cabbage and cheese that comes from the nearby Valtellina Valley in Italy, or capuns, charred leaves wrapped around a filling of sausage or dried meat, a traditional Graubünden dish, or Nusstorte, a rich caramel and nut tart that's an Engadin specialty. As the Glacier Express pulls into the St. Moritz station, completing its 8-hour journey from Zermatt, you realize you've traveled not just through space, but through different worlds. You've climbed from valleys to passes, crossed watersheds and cultural boundaries, seen how geography shapes human settlement, and witnessed engineering achievements that allow modern comfort to coexist with alpine grandeur. The station at St. Moritz is modern and efficient, designed to handle the thousands of visitors who arrive by train every year. But as you step off the Glacier Express and gather your belongings, you carry with you the memories of this journey. The Matterhorn's pyramid rising above Zermatt, the frozen expanse of Oberalp Pass, the Rhine Gorge's wild beauty, the Landwasser Viaduct's dramatic span, the crystalline light of the Engadin. This train journey is more than just transportation. It's an experience that connects you to the landscape in ways that flying or driving never could. By traveling slowly, by following the contours of the valleys and the routes that geography allows, you gain an understanding of the Alps that's visceral and deep. You see how these mountains have shaped human history, how passes and valleys determine trade routes, how communities adapted to extreme conditions, how engineering overcame seemingly impossible obstacles. The Glacier Express isn't just a train, it's a journey through Switzerland's heart, a moving meditation on the relationship between humans and mountains, technology and nature, past and present. As you leave the station and enter St. Moritz, ready to explore this famous resort, you take with you the gift that this journey provides, a deeper appreciation for the magnificent, complex, beautiful landscape of the Swiss Alps in winter. If you've enjoyed this journey through the Swiss Alps on the Glacier Express, I hope you'll consider subscribing to Sleepy Planet and hitting that like button. There are so many more peaceful journeys and fascinating destinations to explore together. More stories of incredible landscapes and the ways humans have learned to live within them. Whether you're using these videos to help you sleep, to travel vicariously, or simply to find a moment of peace in a busy day. Thank you for letting me be your guide through these remarkable places. Until next time, may your dreams be filled with snow-covered mountains, crystalline winter light, and the gentle rhythm of train wheels carrying you through landscapes of wonder. Sleep well, travel safely, and remember that sometimes the journey itself is the destination. Good night.